Yesterday, a frustrated group of lawmakers tried to get details from an attorney general on Capitol Hill who suggested he couldn't say much about this. Watch.
Did you seek the AP's assistance in the first place? And if not, why not?
Again, Mr. Chairman, I don't know what happened there with the interaction between the AP and the Justice Department. I was recused from the case. I don't have a factual basis to answer the questions that you have asked because I was recused. I don't know what has happened. I don't know. I assume he was, but I don't know.
I don't know. Andrew McCarthy is senior fellow at the National Review Institute and a contributing editor at the National Review. Former prosecutor with the Department of Justice. He put terrorists in jail, including the Blind Sheikh. Thank you again for being here. So he has no idea because he says he recused himself when the whole thing got started because they questioned him about somebody who might have had the information to leak. And at that point he said, all right, I'm out, delegated all. But he went on to say, I'm not sure who actually would have signed off on it. I'm 95% sure it was probably the Deputy Attorney General Cole, but I don't know. I mean, how could he not know? And what do you make of that answer?
Well, I think part of it is if he's recused, and he should not know.
Right.
He should know who he's delegated things to when he's recused. But I think Holder's had so many problems giving conflicting answers to Congress over the years that he's developed this habit, which I guess if you were in his position, you would probably cultivate, not to give a clear answer that doesn't have any wiggle room. Because if he admits something and then gets caught on it, like, you know, maybe he did know something about it and you know, there's some document that shows he has knowledge, then he has another kind of problem. So I think he just gives these kinds of weaselly answers because... And
there's no way of pinning him down? I mean, isn't there a way of saying... give us the facts exactly on what date did you recuse, what were you asked that led you to recuse yourself, who can back you up on that, and more importantly, who are you going to put before us who can tell us why the AP was targeted, why you didn't consult with them in advance as the law requires, except in very limited circumstances, who can walk us through, because, forgive us, but we're not having a whole lot of trust in government these days.
Well, you shouldn't have a whole lot of trust in the Justice Department in particular, but you know, even though I'm not a Holder fan, there is a culture in the Justice Department that when you're talking about an investigation, you almost sound dishonest when you're asked about it because you're not supposed to comment on it. And I think if you've had the kind of problems that Holder has had, it's almost understandable that you would give an answer that you could wiggle out of because he's constantly getting himself into these
Let me ask you about this AP thing, because you're a tough on terror guy.
Right.
And a lot of the Republicans defended these leak probes, although there are far, far fewer under President Bush than we've seen under President Obama, by saying, look, you can't be leaking national security information that's going to endanger the lives of the American public. And that's sort of what we just heard President Obama say.
Yeah, I was one of the complainers during the Bush years that they did nothing about this. And I applaud the Obama administration for being concerned about national security leaks. I fault them for causing national security leaks, which they do on the days that they're not, cracking down on it. But
when they find it favorable to them, like the UBL raid and so on.
Right, exactly. But here's the thing. In the U.S. Attorney's offices, in the Justice Department, subpoenaing the press is a big deal. It's a major big deal. And when you do it, what you're supposed to do is do a careful investigation so you narrow down the possibilities of where the leak is coming from. So, for example, I've known of cases where they asked everybody in the government who might have known something that got leaked to file an affidavit. And then they go through the affidavits, they figure out which reporters got talked to. Now, you can't stop people from lying, but assuming that you get truthful information in affidavits, then you at least have a narrow collection of people that you might want to follow up on. What they did here was scorch the earth for all of these different reporters, evidently without having narrowed down who the possible candidates for the leak were. And what's wrong here is that the adult supervision is supposed to be in the Justice Department to prevent that kind of thing from happening. In other words, you always get these guys who are the line prosecutors who have the case, who really want the information, and they want to scorch the earth. And the people at the Justice Department are supposed to be there to tell them, no, 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 that's not how we
There's a First
do
Amendment.
business here. Right.
We're talking about the freedom of the press.
Exactly. And the real danger here is listening to President Obama's press conference. I think this media shield law is a bad idea. What's a good idea is having adult leadership and political accountability in the Justice Department so this sort of thing doesn't happen. I'm afraid we're going to get saddled with a bad law as an overreaction to what happened
That's
here.
an interesting point. Let me shift gears with you now to Benghazi, because I was talking about the president's comments with Starr. Well, actually, not Benghazi, the IRS. I'm so confused by all my scandal.
Right.
First, we were talking about the Associated Press and the DOJ investigating him. Now I want to shift to the IRS investigating conservative groups.
Right.
And the question is, how far does this go? And whether the White House now, President Obama is now very outraged about it and so on and so forth. But there's a question about whether the outrage is a day late and a dollar short, because we've had hundreds of conservative organizations stymied in their attempts to organize and collect donations and support the causes that they believe in while the IRS was perpetrating this scheme. So the Bloomberg reporter asked President Obama who in the White House knew about this. Who, if anybody, in the White House knew about it? Hold on a second, and I will pull up the verbate again of exactly what she asked. Can you assure the American people that nobody in the White House knew about the IRS's actions before your counsel's office found out about the IG probe? And once again, let's hear what the president said.
I can assure you that I certainly did not know anything about the IG report before the IG report had been leaked through press.
And then the Associated Press comes out with this headline. Obama assures he did not know about IRS political targeting before reports became public.
Right.
That is not what he assured.
Megan, you did non-responsive answer before I heard. I'm going to do implied admission. All right. There's a principle of the law that says if the answer screams out to be no, and you don't give a no answer, it's like saying yes. Mm-hmm. He didn't answer the question. It's very clear that he was asked, what did you folks in the White House know? He wasn't asked about the IG report. Mm-hmm. He answered, I didn't know anything about the IG report. The question is, what did you know in the White House
about the IRS wrongdoing?
So that's number one. I'd be very suspicious now that people in the White House knew exactly what was going on. And the second thing I'd point out is this. As important as the law is, and the regulations in an agency, is the ethos of an agency. We saw this like in the 90s when you had the wall where, they had these regulations and people didn't cooperate. It was because they felt like they shouldn't cooperate. This went on at the IRS because they felt like it was okay to do this kind of thing.
We're going to talk to Ted Olson, who represents the Koch brothers, who says his clients are targets number one on what he believes is an enemies list, and he thinks the two things are related. Andy, thank you so much. Andy McCarthy, everybody. We've got breaking news from Washington.